All right, welcome back, everybody, to Land's Flip Classroom. Welcome, welcome. I'm your host, Mr. Land. So for today's video, we are going to be using our notes here. Civil War book, that's the one you want. We're going to be using that. So I'm going to be taking you through the notes. I'm going to be pausing at some points to give you a chance to pause. You really have to listen well. I'm going to take you through this book here, through the journey of the Civil War, and I'm going to let you go at your own pace, all right? So all the strategies that I'm going to do here with you, I want you to use your highlighters, your markers, all right? And I want you to listen well again so you can pause and get all of those answers inside of each page. All right. So for you students out there on the interwebs, you're just here to learn. That's great. But if you're in my class, you're using this one. You ready? All right. So we are gonna get going. All right. Let's start with chapter 1. Chapter 1, look on your page there, kids. Chapter 1 is called sectionalism. Now look at that word there, sectionalism. So I want you to kind of focus on that word section. Now that word section is going to be our focus. I want you to circle the word and I want you to highlight it because this is going to be the reasons why the Civil War begins. These are the different lifestyles for each region. There's your answer right there. Make sure you write it down in your box. So why is America breaking up into sections? Well, as we learned from the Industrial Revolution, there's reasons. So America is showing loyalty to a section, not a whole. So they're kind of breaking up. There's another answer for you down there at the bottom. Now let's look at each one of those sections. Now in the North, we know that the North focuses on factories and manufacturing, 1 and 2. So right there, you're going to want to pause and write those answers down. Now, the southern section is going to focus on 3 different areas: plantations, cash crops, and slavery. Boom. So you're going to want to pause and get those answers. Now, the West is going to focus on primarily mining. Why? California, gold rush. And of course, now all that farmland is providing agriculture. Boom. Pause and get those answers. So you see, kids, how this is working? I want you to pause me and get those answers as we go along. Pause me as you need and come on back. Good. So sections in America is causing a breakup, if you will. Now I'm going to move forward here, and there's going to be some questions that we'll look at. Some I'll look at with you, some I won't. Here's a question. Now, what you can do is you can pause and you can attempt to answer the question on your own, or you can go with me and follow until we get the answer to see how you would have done. Try it like a practice quiz, if you will. So again, you can pause and try to answer it and go at your own pace, or you can go with me, your choice. So take a look at this picture here. Now, the region on the question of the map are the 3 sections, and then the economy is the money making. And right there, the West has the question mark. So how did the West make that money is the question. And that's what I'm asking you to look at. So let's get rid of farms because farms isn't a good answer. The cottage industry, kids are like, oh yeah, those are the workers with their hands like in Mr. Land's class. Nope, they're in the North too because they are the precursor to the factory. So we're going to get rid of those. So now how does the West make money? How do you think it does? Well, you got 2 really good answers right there. 2 really good answers, but only one is the best one. Boom. If you said it was mining and the ores and minerals like gold, think gold rush, you were correct. 100% for you. Awesome. So again, I hope you got that right. You can pause me and go at your own pace, or you can go with me and I'll walk you through the question. All right. And now you got it on your paper there, and we're ready to go on to the next chapter. That's going to be chapter 2. You ready? All right, turn that page and let's go to chapter 2. Now, we have learned about the Missouri Compromise of 1820, but it's important to bring it back because it's going to be a cause. What's the issue? There's your answer. Now, the issue is having a slave versus free state joining the U.S. So according to the compromise, there was this line there, the 3630 line, which divides the United States kind of in half. And on the one hand, you have the free versus the slave state. So the compromise is that slavery will not be allowed above that line. There's your answer. Now, the territories in question will be Missouri and Maine. So Missouri says, well, I want to be a slave state. But then Maine comes in and says, wait a minute, I want to be a state too, but I want to be a free state. So the trick here is that the 2 territories are trying to balance the outlay of the land, okay? So we can't have too many slave states or too many free states. And there is the compromise. So this lasts only for a little while because, as we know, the Civil War will break America apart. Now look at the question here. which statement explains an effect of the Missouri Compromise? Remember, kids, you can pause me right now and try to tackle the question, or you can work with me, whatever you choose, all right? It's independently on you so that you can make your best choice for you. I'm going to work it out now. So I'm looking at that key word here, the effect after después of the Missouri Compromise. So I'm going to take an answer out here. Ended the slave trade? No way. Slavery's still a thing during the Missouri Compromise. Now, fugitive slaves were criminal slaves. Now that's a good thought here. So it says, does it enable the South to get fugitive slaves? No, it is about slavery, but it isn't about that. And so it's not about the fugitives. And there's your two choices. So is it about the free state slave states, or is it about the population for representation? And then you kind of make your choice there. I walked you through 50-50. And if you answered it's about free states versus slave states, boom, you got it right. Excellent. So you ready to move on? We're going to chapter 3 now. The Compromise of 1850. Turn that page, and here we go. Let's look at the Compromise. Now, this is new. This is new. Now, how is this adding to the sectionalism and the causes of the Civil War? Well, there's a state and an issue that's going to pop up here, and we know about it. It's a big old territory in the West. So, again, the issue is slavery. Do we allow new territory in America to be a slave versus free state? Do you see the pattern here during the Civil War leading up to it, why all of this is happening? Slave state versus free state. It's kind of a problem, right? And America's trying to balance it. So that's the issue again. Do we allow this in our union? Now, there was that territory. You see the red map there? You see the red map that we learned about in westward expansion? The Mexican Cession. Now, good old California wants to come in to the Union, to the United States. So what does California want to be? They want to be a free state, or do they think they want to be a slave state? Well, California says we'll compromise and we want to come in to the Union, but we want to be a free state. But to appease and please the South, the fugitive slave law is put into effect. Why? It's all about that balance. It's all about that balance again, about keeping them happy. Sorry about that. We're going to get rid of that right now. Okay. No. There we go. Sorry about that, kids. Now, that means that those slaves can be pursued from the South into the North. Now, this makes Northerners very unhappy, but it's part of the compromise. It's what makes this compromise kind of unhappy and unhealthy. So the territory in question is the Mexican Cession. So California wants to be a free state, which is great for the North. But unfortunately, the effect is this, that when the government compromises, California can be free, but other territories, for instance, look at the map, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, those states could choose to have their own pathway to freedom or slavery. In other words, they could control their own destiny. In American government, we call that popular sovereignty. In other words, the people have the choice. Now, this is going to be a delicate balance, but it's going to hold for a little while, not for very long. So California, you're in, you're free, but the rest of the territories, you might be slave states, and it's going to be up to you. So let's look at a question of what this might look like on the star. Which of these correctly describes an effect of the Compromise of 1850 on escaped slaves? And again, you can pause this and you can try it on your own, or you can go with me. You ready? Okay. So I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to look at the words here, and I'm going to go, okay, there's an effect on the Compromise of 1850 on escaped slaves. A freedman is a free African-American / slave. Now, when I look at the answer choices, I'm throwing out H right away, because the slave markets has nothing to do with at all here. This is about territories. So when I look at each of those remaining answers, those are some good answers. I see few groups captured under fugitive slave law, gold mines, slaves were welcomed in the gold mine, and then voting in territories in the Mexican Cession. But I gotta whittle it down to 50-50. So I'm gonna take off that G, because the slaves were not welcomed in the gold mines. Of course not. California was a free state. It wanted to be a free state. So there you go, 50-50. So what will you choose? Take a look. If you chose, boom, F right there, you got it. That meant that the groups could be capturing the slaves with the fugitive slave law. Good for you. Let's go on to the next chapter. Chapter 4. Now, this is the beginning there. If you look at the top of chapter 4, there's a cause and effect here. So I want you to look at chapter 4, the Fugitive Slave Law. What is the cause? Now, we have learned this in class already a little bit. So the Fugitive Slave Law is the cause box. What is the effect? The effect is that the North and the South are going to fight about this law, which we just saw in the last chapter. So I want you to write those answers there in your cause and effect box right now. Okay, you pause, now you're back. Now, to kind of continue, I'm not going to ask you to do a lot of work on this page right now because we've already learned it in class. So the Fugitive Slave Law says that the slave-owning Southerners can chase escaped slaves. Now, this creates some mess because that means they can actually accuse Black people who are free in the North of being escaped slaves. And that's not fair. And the North didn't find it fair. Now, kids, again, you don't have to write anything other than that cause and effect box because I feel good about this page and I feel like you guys understand it. So I'm going to move forward now. All right, I'm going to move forward now from this law because I think it's pretty good in your knowledge. So when I look at this question, let's practice that right now, yeah? Here's the newspaper. See the headline? Again, you can pause me or you can go at the pace with me. Look at the question. Which of these directly resulted from the event announced in this headline? So the headline is there. So the result of the passing of the Fugitive Slave Act. So I'm going to throw an answer out right away. I'm going to look at the answer choices and I'm just going to think one of these is really bad. So abolitionists moved south. No, they did not. Now remember that tensions between the North and the South were getting worse. It's building that sectionalism. Abolitionists, which are the voices for anti-slavery, were growing. They were getting angrier. So now I'm going to kind of eliminate a little more here. The federal government did not allow slavery, and no, the Senate did not end black codes. If you said that the abolitionist movement gained momentum, 100 for you. That means that the North was getting angrier. Okay, now let's go and turn the page to chapter 5. The Kansas-Nebraska Act, very controversial. Now here on the screen you see a man named Stephen Douglas, known as AKA the Little Giant. He was a little man, but he was a powerful man. Now what's the issue of the Kansas-Nebraska Act? Well, if you guessed Kansas and Nebraska, haha, you're right. Now the issue was that there was a slave versus free state issue again. See the pattern? In other words, Mr. Douglas really wants to have a railroad come through the North. Now to do this, he's thinking that he wants to break up the Kansas-Nebraska territory. Do you see it on the map? Now he would like to have a free state and a slave state to kind of keep the balance. But this is not going to make anyone happy because in this story, everyone wants what they want. Free states want to be free. Slave states want to have slaves. Now, the issue of popular sovereignty is going to come up. What do I mean? In other words, remember, people were allowed in the West to choose if they wanted slavery or not. So he suggests, hey guys, let's let the people of these territories, Kansas and Nebraska, choose if they want slavery or not. Now, ultimately, this is sort of going to work out, but it's not. So what do I mean? Well, the North wants to be free. So Nebraska, they choose free. They want to be a free state. Easy peasy, right? Everyone's happy there. But Congress allows them to choose their fate, right? That's what we're saying here, popular sovereignty. There's your cause box, write it down. So that's great. But Kansas is going to get kind of messy. So the effect is that slavery is allowed to expand above that line. Remember that line, that Missouri Compromise line? So that was a no-no to the Northerners. They were like, hey, you said that we didn't have to have slave states above that line. Now you're saying that Kansas can be slave state? What is going on here? That's not right. We can't allow that. So in essence, this act is going to get rid of the Missouri Compromise. And that's going to piss off a lot of Northerners because it's going to disrupt the balance of the free versus slave states. Now, FYI, spoiler alert, Kansas wants to be a slave state and it's going to get messy, right? So if you look there on and you got your cause and effect, I'm just going to show you one. Now, you don't have to write this one. So the Kansas-Nebraska Act is going to breed fighting. You don't have to write this one. I'm just going to throw this little detail out to you. There's going to be violence. Do you remember John Brown? Remember John Brown, the famous abolitionist? He actually promoted fighting in this area through violence. And so while Mr. Douglas was hoping to get his bill passed for his railroad, this was leading to all kinds of fighting in Kansas between the northern abolitionists and the southern slaveholders. People were literally piling into Kansas just to kill each other to make the point that they were going to dominate that territory. It's kind of like an 8th grade fight where everyone just starts joining in the food fight in the cafeteria, and it's just a mess. And people were dying simply to get their choice of territory in Kansas. It was called Bleeding Kansas. You don't have to write any of this down. This is just extra right now. Okay, but we're going to go on here to a question. You ready? We're going to tackle the question there on your page. Take a look. Now, when I look at these 3 bullets, look at the question. What was the fundamental question addressed here? Look at the list. Missouri Compromise, Compromise of 1850, Kansas-Nebraska Act. So right there, I'm throwing out westward expansion. That's not necessary. So I look at those 3. Oh, you know what? Nullification, you're out too because you're from Jackson's time. That's South Carolina. Nope. So there's your answers. So secede means to leave. So should states be able to leave, or should slave labor be allowed? What's this about? We already know the whole Civil War. What's it about? Boom. If you answered slave labor in new states, you would be correct. Round of applause. Now, I'm going to turn the page. Yeah, here we go. Chapter 6, the Republican Party. You ready? All right. This one, kind of a straightforward one. The Republican Party was not started by Abraham Lincoln, even though he is the face that we associate with it. The elephant shows up because it is the symbol and mascot of the Republican Party, founded in 1854. There's your answer. Next answer is that the formation of the party was because of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the bleeding Kansas and the fighting between the North and the pro-South slave states. It was horrible. So the Republican Party was born in Wisconsin in 1854. Now, they agreed to keep slavery in the South. They just want to contain it. So on the map, you see there that they want to keep slavery in the South. They're not trying to eliminate it. They just want to control it. Because at this time, the political parties are all divided about what? About slavery. Now, so last answer, they were containing slavery by opposing its expansion. They wanted to oppose spreading it west, spreading it north, spreading it east. They didn't want that. They wanted to keep it in the South. And that's the beginning of the political party we call today in 2023 the Republican Party. Look at the statement here. You ready? Want to try? Here we go. Which statement describes both the Free Soil and Republican Party? You're probably asking, what's the Free Soil Party? That is the pre-Republican Party. Get it? Free Soil Party, freedom. So I'm going to throw out an answer right now that I see from the list that has nothing to do. You know what? We could probably throw out 2. Has nothing to do with factory workers and nothing to do with American Indians. Look at your choices. What do you think? Ready? If you answered, boom, they were against expansion of slavery, you were correct. Excellent. All right, let's turn the page. Now, I'm going to finish right here. Now, I'm not going to read this section because we're actually going to do it in class, but I am going to do the notes for you. So I want you to turn the page one more time to chapter 7. Not this one, not this one. I'm going to move forward. This one, chapter 7. The famous Dred Scott case of 1857. What's going on here? Now, to sum it up, I'll give you the short summary, but in class, we do have to read on this case. Why? Top 2-3 controversial government decisions of all time. It's horrible. It's the worst. What's going on here? Dred Scott is a man who is a slave, and he wants his freedom. And that's what he's seeking. But it's the decision that's the horrible part. Let's look at the answers. So what's the issue? Dred Scott, a slave, he is suing for his freedom. Now, in this story, it's really complicated. It spreads over 10 years with over 5 states and destinations that Dred is moving around and several owners. So we'll get into the details in class. So Dred, he wants his freedom for him and his wife. Now, the ruling from the Supreme Court, when it finally reaches the Supreme Court after 10 years, the Supreme Court rules that Scott is not a citizen. He's not a person. So then what is he, class? You already know. He is property. So because the Constitution never ever talks about African Americans as citizens, they are property. Now, what is the meaning of this outcome? Two things, biggies. Number one, the Missouri Compromise is ruled unconstitutional. I know you're thinking, what? How did the Missouri Compromise show up in this case? We'll talk. The Missouri Compromise is thrown out. It's gone. It's illegal. So now, what does that mean? That means slavery can now spread above that line to the north and the west. And now slavery is going to go unchecked. Now the North is going to get scared because they're like, wait, slavery everywhere? How could the Supreme Court do this? And not only that, how could the Supreme Court rule that Dred was a property and not a man? Controversy, controversy. All right, let's do one more question. You ready? Take a look at the headlines. Missouri Compromise, declared unconstitutional, the triumph of slavery. These headlines refer to which Supreme Court case? Anytime I see slavery and I see court case, I'm thinking one, Dred Scott, the poor slave who wanted nothing but his freedom. I'm going to stop right there. You've been awesome, everybody. So I will see you in class. Get your notes down. Thank you for being here.